Hello everyone out there at MagicCon Minneapolis. It's my great pleasure to tell you that our next panel is just about to get underway. Aftermath, the ultimate event set. We've got a team that's going to come out and talk to you about this massive undertaking that was involved in bringing not just March of the Machine to life, but also the Aftermath, a supplementary set to put a bow on the creative side, the story of the set that we're playing with at the moment, March of the Machine, and of course the Aftermath, as I say. Couldn't be contained in one set. This supplementary product in the Aftermath wraps up the Phyrexian arc. It sets the stage for the next part of Magic storytelling. And here to tell you all about it, my friends, would you please welcome the host of this panel, the senior creative lead from Wizards of the Coast. It's Matt Danner, everyone.
Hello. How's it going, Minneapolis? Thank you so very much for joining me here on Saturday, taking your time to talk story with me here. But I am not alone. I'm going to introduce our head of story, Roy Graham. Next up, we have Arsenault Rivera, our head author for Mid, for Vow, and all of the Mom Made stories. And last but certainly not least, I have your hometown hero, Minneapolis' favorite son, our principal AD, Taylor Ingvarsson. Awesome. So thanks so much for that warm welcome. We're here today to talk about Mom and Aftermath. Mom is so big. March of the Machines had so many story beats, so many moments that it couldn't all be contained in one set. Kira, you helped us. You helped us on Mom. It was a
did a
huge
bit,
undertaking.
A little bit.
Talk to us about that. How do you make it all fit?
So, we didn't, was the simple answer, and that's why we have Aftermath. March of the Machines is 50,000 words long, and that's just the main story. It's not counting all of the side stories, and that's already a short novel length project. And even then, we still didn't have enough room for all of the story.
Yeah, so what all happens here? So you started with working with us on Midnight Hunt.
Yeah.
So talk to me a little bit about that process. How does bringing in an external author, how does that all work?
So, sometimes in this life, you have to shoot your shot. And that's exactly what I did. I saw an open call posting for Wizards writers, and I sent a whole bunch of my writing in. And as part of that, I included, hey, I don't know if this helps me or hurts me, but I have an Avacyn Restored tattoo. I really love Magic, you guys.
Can we see the
yeah,
tattoo?
It's right there.
There it is. Cool.
Larger sleeve now, but it's right there. It was the first tattoo I ever got. The response I received about 2 months later was, okay, we're so sure you're gonna say yes to this. We're just gonna send you the NDA. And yeah, I did say yes to it. It was Midnight Hunt and Crimson Vow.
Yeah, you talk about the success. Obviously, Mid went well.
Yes.
Obviously, Vow went well.
Yep.
All of it went so well, and now you've returned for Mom, right? And it really, the scope of this set, I keep saying it, but it is massive, right? So it really takes a village. It's not just regardless of what anybody tells you, there are so many brilliant minds working on Magic.
And we'd love to take a quick moment to shout out Emily Tang, who was the set lead for March of the Machine and couldn't be here to join us today, but was an absolute other titan of the storytelling for this set.
Big ups to Emily Tang, absolutely. In addition, all of the authors that returned to kind of rehash their specific planes of interest from all the side stories that we had as well, right? So we've returned. We're here. There's some returning characters. There's some returning places. Let's talk about an impactful character, let's say. Nice shirt.
Thank you.
But let's talk about Angel Elspeth. I've got a little bit of a glow up going on here.
A tiny bit of a glow up. She's glowing now, for one thing. So it's very literally one. Elspeth was kind of core to this set, and it was one of the first things that we wanted to focus on when we were developing the story for the set, is how to handle her metamorphosis into an angel. It's something that's been an awful long time coming. And for me, it was something that we actually went back and forth about quite a bit. The Elspeth chapter is a bit of a bottle episode. I wrote it in a bit of a fugue state, and then I sent it over to Roy, and we had a bit of a back and forth.
Yeah, it was an interesting process, especially when we were working on outlining that, because I had a sort of vision for Elspeth's transformation section of that story that was pretty different from what we ended up with. On Dominaria, there's this when an angel is incarnated on Dominaria, they form in the Church of Sarah, and they're usually like guided to their tasks by human acolytes or other angels. And I thought it would be funny if Elspeth, walked into the blind eternities, was evaporated by the powerful blast of a Silex, and then woke up with like a newly minted acolyte being like, "Hello, ma'am. Like, welcome to your new life." I thought that the physicality of it was interesting, but Kira came and was like, no. What we need to do is like deliteralize the process and really ground Elspeth's transformation in her past and in her memories.
Yeah, that was something that was super important for me because the history of Elspeth is, in a lot of ways, the history of Magic as we've known it. She's gone through so many different phases. She's been through so many different planes. A lot of them have been really important to the story. And on top of that, Elspeth overcoming her fear is the culmination of her entire arc. So I wanted to have that introspective moment where she's able to really confront all of those things and to confront her history. I always think that it's okay sometimes to be a little less literal in Magic's story. I think it's something that we can reach for, something that people tend to enjoy, it seems. So.
You were, I'll say also, you were so right. Like that chapter, that chapter ended up being one of my favorites of the whole story.
Thank you.
And I still get chills when I read the ending.
Yeah,
so.
It's probably my favorite too.
super mystical, super awesome, and provide some agency to the choice, right? Which
yes,
for me
very important.
is huge, right? So we talk about this larger-than-life character coming back to battle this larger-than-life villain. Taylor, how do you deal with that?
Yeah, so the ask for Elspeth was huge, and she was already an amazing character before. She was already just the super powerful paladin type character that everybody loved and would smite. She smited a god already, so how do we top that? So this time, having the opportunity of like her essentially being obliterated and being able to rebuild herself was really, really interesting and such a fun opportunity. I got a shout out to the artist Kieran Yanner who helped me design Angel Elspeth. We wanted to really like slim down her design and bring sort of a more superhero aesthetic to her being this knightly angel that shows up out of nowhere. So we knew that she was going to fight Elish Norn and really wanted to give her something that would help her feel like she could actually take down one of the most epic villains in Magic's history. So we decided to remake the Godsend as this massive, massive sword that just is pure energy and could only take an Angel Elspeth to wield it.
I mean, the story is captivating. The visuals are captivating. We got to see Angel Elspeth flying resplendently over there.
That's so
and
cool.
Tons of cosplayers as Angel Elspeth this weekend too. It's been really, really exciting to see. So that's one of our returning characters. Speaking of coming out of nowhere, we have a returning plane.
Sort of. In a way.
It's been a plane the whole time, but talk to me about it.
Right. So there were a lot of asks, right, going into the March of the Machine story. There was a lot we were narratively looking to accomplish. And one of those was bringing Teferi's character arc to a sort of satisfying conclusion. And you couldn't really do that without correcting his sort of greatest mistake and his deepest regret, which was phasing out his homeland of Jalfir without, consulting the good people of Jalfir on whether or not they wanted to be saved by being removed from our timeline. And that's a big ask, of course. Shout out to Sean and McGuire for helping us actually set up what we would come to, the method by which we bring in Jalfir all the way back in, I believe that was Crimson Vow.
It was Midnight Hunt.
It was Midnight Hunt, even further back.
Because
okay,
I reviewed the story while I was writing Midnight Hunt.
As far back as Midnight Hunt, we started to plant seeds of how to make that happen. But Jalfir returning was only one part of the puzzle. We also needed to find a way to, at least for the moment, declaw or disarm the great terror that is, the Phyrexian war machine. And over many conversations, a lot of back and forth about how to approach that, we sort of came to this realization that that using the Phyrexians' own weapon against them, Realmbreaker, the World Tree, that's been letting them punch holes through the Blind Eternities and invade planes across the multiverse, was the most elegant way to sort of accomplish both of these feats in one swoop.
Jalfir is back. You talked about planting seeds and bringing Teferi's arc to a kind of compelling close. Taylor, talk to me a little bit. So Ren takes over Realmbreaker, and then...
Yeah, we wanted to give Ren more of like a positive send-off and allow Teferi to interact with Ren once more before we sort of say goodbye to that character for a second.
For reference, to when we talk about Ren's send-off, I think Neil touched on this in the last panel, but Ren burns the last of her life force, the fire that was originally taken from the wildfire consuming her plane, in the act of controlling Realmbreaker and reaching out across the Blind Eternities to return Jalfir and Teferi to the timeline that we know.
Yeah, she essentially commits the ultimate sacrifice to save everybody else. So at least I wasn't ready to fully let go of that character, and really wanted to push for some moment in the set where we could show sort of her essence sort of being replanted, so that maybe we can see her again in the future.
Yeah. A lot of feels at the end of this one, right? And we tell the story through the lens of the characters, and we talk about the overlay of Jalfir, and here Teferi is back, and it's kind of this bittersweet reunion as he returns to Jalfir, as it's been overlaid in where Mirren was, Argentum was. Kira, that's such a heartfelt scene where he's on the hillside and hearing the drum. There's a lot of emotions in that scene. Talk us through that.
There's a whole lot of emotions there. There were a whole lot of emotions throughout this whole set, honestly. It's a set that's about conclusions, and it's about facing up to what you've done, and it's about coming together and trying to live in the face of that. Things are kind of bad right now, but if we all band together, we'll be all right. When I was writing episode 10, I felt a lot of that myself, just through the process of the village that I had taken to write this, and also in terms of all of the people who had helped me on my magic journey. Episode 10 is one of the more personal ones for me, because the drumming at the start that you mentioned is actually a reference to both my mother and my stepfather. My stepfather being a jazz musician who's really interested in polyrhythms, and my mother, I'm Puerto Rican. Back in the days, you used to send news through various drum rhythms. And I wanted to touch back on the sense of community there, and that was the first thing I went for, is my own community. And, throughout the iterations, we also did things like we added Mirrodin's sons into Jalfir as well, so that the Mirrans weren't alone on Jalfir. They had something, at least, to remind them of their home.
So awesome.
Yeah. There's a lot of that sort of bittersweetness in that final episode, especially. You mentioned the Mirrodin, the sons of Mirrodin still there, the Mirrans having lost their home but kept something still of it. There's also, we were talking about Elspeth being sort of fundamentally changed by her transformation, having left a lot of herself behind when she died and let go of mortality, right?
Mm-hmm. Yeah. We also had the conclusion there of Elspeth and Koth. We had that little moment where they were able to talk and come to a resolution there. And I thought that was very important too, because Koth has been fighting for 10 years at this point. And this is actually the first time that Koth has ever legitimately touched grass. In more ways than one. And I really needed him to have that moment. He needed to not be angry for a little bit and to have that resolution. And also to touch back on what Elspeth and Koth's relationship had been like before. Koth sent Elspeth away without her consent, and that was the last time that they saw each other. And now they're in a place where it's kind of reversed, and now Elspeth isn't quite who Koth expects her to be.
Right. Yeah, I love that mirroring of their relationship with Teferi and Jalfir also, right?
Yes.
Which Miguel Lopez wrote the story at the end of one of Teferi finding himself on Jalfir again, and his home being being different than he expected, and right, and sort of out of his own control, and and learning to let go of what he needed it to be. That's I just wow, what symmetry.
It's almost like we're good at our jobs.
It's a lot like that. Speaking of good at their jobs, so we talk about all these characters that we have to put the lens on. Let's talk about all the planes. Like the one interesting caveat about our game is the way that it's conveyed to the players is in a non-linear fashion. So when you open a booster pack and you flip rifle through that booster pack, it's kind of like a Tarantino movie in that like it's just like it's super non-linear, right? And so we have to do this visual storytelling in a way that isn't like start here and then turn the page. Like we just don't have that luxury. So Taylor, it's your job to visually signpost all of these planes. I think we're at like 36 battles in the set, right?
Yeah.
So we see these invasion of cards. There are 36 different battles. Talk about that. You've got this tiny little art box, and you have to convey what plane we're on, like almost instantaneously.
Yeah, so we touched on this a little bit in the previous panel. So if you were there for that one, thank you so much for coming back. But every plane has its own visual identity, and there are some that hit you over the head more than others. Some can be a little bit more subtle, and we started to really instill like subtly large objects into the planes that just are immediate identifiers. If you don't have, say, like, say on Kamagawa, for example, if there's not a techno samurai in front of you, you have sort of this futuristic Japan with all these neon lights, super high rise, everything's sort of traditional but ramped up and made it really feel like a re-envisioning of what Kamagawa was in the past, but bringing it to the future.
When you break it down, it sounds like super easy, right? You're like, oh, it's just easy. Just like, there's neon, and there's pagodas, and there's ninjas, and there's samurai, right? Like, yeah, it's fine, it's easy. But you can see it here, and it reads very, very well in the art, right? Like, it's instantly conveyable. You see those neon lines. You see the invasion portals taking shape and Realmbreaker looming in the sky. And I think we have a few other images here as well on Kamagawa, right?
Yep.
The neon lights, the samurai, right? Like, really conveying the visual shape language.
Talked about a couple things with every plane having a very flexible toolkit where you don't need to jam it full of everything, but if you have at least one ninja in there or one sort of more traditional looking building, but it's got neon lines sort of following the contours of the structure. We don't have any other planes that are like that, so it's an easy identifier for. I'm pretty sure this is Kamagawa, and then knowing that you're.
Now that's definitely Kamagawa. You do that.
Yeah. This one's a overly complex Kamagawa,
but lovingly rendered. And we talk about that. So one of the things that we do when we're building our worlds is create all of these visual signifiers that go into the world guide. The scope of this set wasn't just like, hey, here's this one world guide. Like, there was a world guide for the set, but like you had to distill all these worlds down to like their core truth and then present that. Yeah. I think next up we have Strixhaven. Like, we can just do rapid fire if you want.
Yeah, so Strixhaven's one that's a little bit louder. Obviously, you get the College of Strixhaven, but throughout the plane, you get these beautiful star arches that show up within almost every environment, I think, that we show throughout that set. And in March of the Machine, you see them as well. Some are being corrupted during the different phases. But anytime you see sort of arches of floating stones, that's definitely Strixhaven.
You're on Arcavius.
Yeah.
Got it.
Yeah.
And here we see some returning characters. Additionally, okay, so next up we have Kaldheim. Let's talk about Kaldheim.
Kaldheim is
damn
epic. At least so for this set. I still love that Kaldheim was the only plane that I can think of that was kind of ready and rooting for a fight.
Yeah, they were like, let's go.
Let's go. But,
Ragnarok, you said.
Yeah. Skim farm. The world tree is a huge visual here, and plenty of times within all the art you can see the light of Starnheim, which sort of has sort of like a sundog effect always throughout the sky, as well as sort of like a northern lights, sort of aurora borealis going through the sky, and you can see that as ships are sort of sailing around the plane. They actually use that almost like rivers and things like that to fly around. It's really, really beautiful.
Yeah, Kaldheim's awesome.
Yeah,
looks great here.
It's my favorite.
Let's talk about Ravnica.
Yeah.
Ravnica are the city of guilds.
Yeah, Ravnica is interesting. Besides the guilds, all the architecture is really inspired by like 17th century Prague. And there's something that I love about the plane. It's sort of a never-ending cityscape. And thankfully, we have 2 writers on stage to help me out with what this word is called, because I always forget it.
Yeah, there was actually like talk about how it takes a village,
Yeah.
right? And during the previews when we were planning for this, I was told that it's a megalopolis, and then it was like no, it's a
It's an ecumenopolis.
Oh yeah, it's one of those. Yeah. Anyway, we have people that are
Ecumenopolis.
great with words, and I'm so glad they're here for me. For us. But yeah, we see in here we see Ravnica with those cities, with those spires that we talked about. Zendikar.
Yeah, Zendikar's pretty easy. Like, Hedrons immediately are the signifier that you're on Zendikar. Obviously, we've got the 7 continents that they have their own look. And then in the Zendikar Rising, we also introduced Skyclaves, which also have some diamond core-like shape language to it. So pretty easy to spot Hedrons or Skyclaves to know that to root yourself on that plane, and then we can add the set dressing of March of the Machine, or in Aftermath, we'll see sort of Realmbreaker kind of dilapidated, split off from the Blind Eternities and kind of falling in the background.
This one's fun where you have a Hedron going through an invasion portal. You're like,
Yeah.
oh man,
You never know when a portal's just going to show up on your Hedron.
nothing is safe. Nothing is safe in this invasion. All right, let's get to some of the maybe less seen planes. Here we have Fiora.
Yeah, Fiora's like early centuries sort of inspired by like Italy and Florence, but also there's some planes that we've just showcased more characters there than not. So like Queen Marchesa is an easy swing of like, I bet we're rooted in this plane just on the characters that we're seeing within that card.
She's taken a lot of steps to make sure that Fiora is all about her.
And her card is pretty sweet. It was her just being her regal self, but atop a bunch of fallen Phyrexians. Like, she's like cleaning her nails. Like, I don't like that.
Job's done.
I don't like that. Yeah.
Let's talk about one of your favorite planes ever that was very easy to concept. Let's talk about Segovia. And let's actually talk about the visual trope here. So Segovia is, everything is miniature. So
Yep. So Segovia is, so it's a cool plane. It's challenging to do a lot of time, or a lot at once, because of the visual space, and that is everything sort of has like a tilt shift effect to it, which can look cool and can look not so great. So it's a very sort of niche look to the plane, but this one came out. It was a lot of fun to play around with, kind of bringing a little bit of that whimsy back that we were talking about in the previous panel. It's such a heavy set. There's so much going on. It can be very doom and gloom, but then you get Segovia, where their biggest threat are some Phyrexian feet trying to smush their towns from the Alabaster Host.
but they're not like they're not just taking it. Like, you've got these ankle biting colossal.
They're gonna fight back as much as they
sea
want.
serpents.
You know.
Well, all the planes did. You did a very good job of that. And so what you're telling us is you can run this tilt shift effect. It worked well on a couple of cards, but might be difficult on a few hundred.
Yeah,
Okay.
I was able to negotiate down a little bit of how many Segovian cards were showing up in this particular set, but I couldn't get all of them out. And I do think it was a good choice to be able to show this plane getting invaded by Phyrexia as well, as it is beloved by a lot of people.
It's super awesome. And last but not least, we have new Phyrexia. The invasion is in full swing here.
Mm-hmm.
Talk about what Phyrexia looks like now that they are marching to war across the multiverse.
Yeah, so we wanted Phyrexia this time to feel a little bit different than what we saw in All Will Be One. So this image here is a great example of sort of merging the shape language of the plane that's being invaded, as well as sort of Norn's aesthetic. So we get to see sort of a Cathar being taken over by Norn and being sort of in the process of being completed. So you'll see a lot of things where their weapons are kind of fused into their arms. They're not as pretty or well put together as they would be if they were on New Phyrexia, as being like the vision of perfection of what Norn's aesthetic is. So we wanted to really get the feeling across that throughout this entire setting, everybody that you know, and in this case a hero that's supposed to protect the denizens of Innistrad from the monsters, becoming a monster themselves and taking the fight to them anyways.
Yeah.
So it's challenging. That's a tough spot to be in. That's a tough spot.
So that's a lot of planes. I don't think it's an understatement to say that this set was relatively ambitious, right? Like huge breadth and depth. So, Roy, I've got about like a decade plus worth of story content to try to tie all the threads together here. How did you do it?
Well, not alone. I'll tell you that. Yeah, I mean, so this is a challenge we run into every time we set up the story for a set, which is, and I think Taylor, you were or Sam was talking about this a little bit on the last panel, where the challenge of telling stories through magic cards is that you get the events out of order a lot of the time, right? It's the story delivery method that most people experience is the booster pack opening.
Right.
And most of the time that makes the card set a less than ideal medium to tell a story through, because as writers we have less control over what information the reader gets when. But I think March of the Machine is one of the few cases where the card set is almost better suited for telling the lift that is being asked of the story, right? Which is this invasion is happening everywhere, all at once, to everyone you've ever seen. And that is a task that is more suited to like 300 discrete pieces of art than it is to, a continuous 50,000 word story. So that was something that Kira and I and the rest of the story team were thinking about really early on in the process, is how to get the feeling of the invasion is everywhere, it's everyone is fighting for their lives, while keeping the camera on a few discrete characters and a few moments that matter. And one of the ways, I know early on in our outlining process, we were talking about using a sort of bar chart to envision the story rather than a more traditional 5-act structure. We were thinking of like, okay, so each episode, the water gets a little higher for all of our main characters wherever they may be, right? So you see like Tyvar on Kaldheim fighting with alongside his brother Harald. Thank you. You see, Chandra and Ren going to New Phyrexia. You see Kaya and Kaito fighting Tamio on Kamagawa, and all of these things are kind of they're like ramping up at more or less equal pace, building the tension across every plane simultaneously.
Yeah. So not an easy undertaking. Kira, talk to us. You did Mid, you did Vow, you took a lot of learnings from those and incorporated them into this story. What did you learn? Kind of like, how did you do it? Like, this is a huge, it's not a huge opportunity, but also a huge challenge. How do you sort all of this?
Not alone. But, working on Mid and Vow was actually very helpful here, because that was a larger story that was broken up into 2 parts, pretty much. And in order to address the bar chart thing, I kind of did the same thing with March of the Machine, where episodes 1 through 5 are kind of about things going left and everything getting slowly worse and worse and worse and worse and worse. And the latter half, episodes 6 through 10, are about ramping up the tension into hype and, culminating in that episode 10 denouement. But beyond that, I mostly chose to focus on a small cast of characters to try and have somebody to touch back on whenever we went to one of these planes. And primarily among them, Chandra was the biggest one of them. And when you're doing a big set like this, it's important to try and pick good focal characters. I think Chandra's incredible for that, not just because she's one of Magic's most recognizable characters, but also because she's one of Magic's most relatable characters. She isn't somebody who, like Teferi, is hundreds of years old and, got rid of his homeland accidentally. She's somebody, whoops, who among us, right? Chandra has trouble with her temper. She has trouble with her emotions. She's just trying to get through the day, and she is so stressed, and people make so many assumptions about her. And I thought that was a really good touch point for a lot of the stuff that goes on in March of the Machine. Also, Chandra just lost 2 of her big mentors in Ajani and Jaya, and they stole her girlfriend. So obviously she's going to want to go back to New Phyrexia. And it felt like there was just so much emotional tension there, and she keeps everything so close to the surface that it had to be Chandra.
Yeah, and we talk about that emotional tension, and really wonderfully captured visually here, right? Where they're finally reunited, and it's pretty rough.
Yeah, this moment was challenging, but also super fun and kind of obviously heartbreaking to portray this moment of Chandra has to fight Nissa, but she's kind of stuck between like wanting to hold back and knowing what she might need to do. So we wanted to really try and convey that in the artwork of this more. Chandra's usually more in your face and punch first, ask questions later. But in this piece, we wanted her to feel a little bit more reserved and more conflicted on what's happening within this moment.
Yeah, you see, I think it's one of the only images I've seen of Chandra where her hands are open.
Yeah,
right.
Yeah.
So like,
she's usually burning something down,
or like
yeah,
gloves up, right? So, traumatic revelations, aptly titled. This is a rough reunion here for Chandra.
Mm-hmm.
So there are some consequences for some characters in this set. There's also some consequences for the worlds.
Yeah. There's some big cosmological changes coming to the multiverse, and we've talked a little bit about these on the weekly Magic the Gathering stream and on some of the Aftermath cards. You're going to get a sense of what's coming down the pipeline. The most notable one being the introduction of Omen Paths. Now, Omen Paths are something that people familiar with Kaldheim might remember. They were a way of going between the realms of Kaldheim, a way for non-planeswalkers to travel between these discrete worlds. And it seems that with Realmbreaker, the Phyrexian world tree, punching holes throughout the Blind Eternities, there have been an introduction of Omen Paths connecting planes throughout the multiverse. So you don't necessarily need to be a planeswalker to travel between worlds anymore.
Well, that's convenient because one of these characters featured here is no longer a planeswalker.
That's
right.
Yeah.
I just want to take a moment to acknowledge the past 2 images. Like this is a story that has been so long in the making. We finally get to see Nissa and Chandra together on card art.
Mm-hmm. It means so much. It really does.
Thank you.
That's good.
So Taylor, we talked about the traumatic revelation and capturing that moment. Talk a little bit about their journey through the Omen Paths and just like the emotional effect that we had to capture here.
Yeah, so with the Omen Paths themselves, having gone through just this multiversal horrific event of every plane being invaded, everything looking very menacing, sharp, aggressive, we wanted it's kind of we wanted the Omen Paths to be shaped as something that could really hold up literally the weight of the multiverse. So we went with the strongest shape imaginable, which are triangles. And with geometry. Geometry.
Look it up.
Yeah. So on the next slide, we'll get to see a couple explorations of sort of what Omen Paths can do and what they might look like. They can sort of appear in any way or manifest at any angle. They can tilt on their axis. They don't always need to be right in your face, but we wanted them to feel more welcoming and mysterious compared to the portals that we just saw from the Phyrexian invasion, which were very dark and menacing and kind of spooky. So we wanted them to be welcoming and inviting. So we, within the throat of the portal, we wanted to sort of play around with these geometric tessellating patterns that I was thinking a lot about, like fun rooms and things like that, where nobody knows what it's like to walk through a portal into the Blind Eternities and out onto somewhere else. So the idea of sort of walking up a staircase, but you're kind of spiraling around with it as you go into it was really interesting to me, and I think they turned out really fun looking. So.
Big time, right? Like I think Leon did these, right?
Yeah, Leon Tucker was great. Absolutely crushed helping us out on these, and I couldn't be happier with where they landed.
Yeah, we talk a lot about how the scope of Mom could not be contained all within one set, and that's very true. And so that's kind of what led to Aftermath as even a product, right? Like we talk about when we design cards from like a top-down approach. And what that means is it's more story forward. It's not bottom up. It's not like they're like, hey, we got all these rules mechanics. This one was truly done in a top-down fashion where it was like, what do we want to show? Like, there are so many threads to tie up that they couldn't be contained in Mom. What do we need to show in Aftermath that will allow for us? So game design we partnered very, very closely with them. They were phenomenal partners in this, in coming up both with the rules to support the top-down designs that we've come up with for the story beats, but also for they were like, hey, what about this? What about this? Like, there was a really great back and forth on this set. Like, the fabric of the multiverse is fundamentally changed. And Roy, hit me.
Well, I just wanted to talk for a second about that back and forth that you're talking about. A lot of the time, it's a give and take with between world building and design. Every set has a certain number of things that it needs to be fun, to be playable, to be draftable, all of these things. And Aftermath, because it was such a narrative ask from the beginning. It was like, let's see, like on Planes Across the Multiverse, the aftermath, right? The consequences of everything that happened. Design was fully the whole time. They were like, "This is a story set. We are with you," and it was so. It was great. It was just like a wonderful experience.
Yeah, it was super cool. And we talk about those consequences, and we've talked about one of the positive ones. But so some things happened in Mom.
Happened.
Some things happened in Mom. There was a Silex detonation in the Blind Eternities. There was a Realm Breaker that pierced all of these realms. Realm Breaker now gone. What happens to those portals? We saw in the Mending, sometimes a Planeswalker loses their spark, and we see that happening here to a lot of characters, and in a lot of different ways. It's almost like this is part of something bigger. Visually, Taylor, you want to talk to us?
Yeah.
What are these glowing squiggles?
So if you're going all the way back to War of the Spark, was sort of the first time that we visually represented what a spark might look like, especially as it's leaving its host. If you remember there, the Eternals were doing their work for Nicol Bolas, ripping out Planeswalker sparks to power the Elder spell. So luckily for us, we already had this unfortunate visual of like what it looks like to tear away something that is so integral to a Planeswalker's identity, which in fact are these glowing little squiggles.
These are actually those very sparks leaving. But I think if we go to the next slide, we have another one of these, right? Like, it's happening, it's being visualized in different ways, so you can even see it in a more abstract representation on some of the booster fun. That's one of the really cool things about Aftermath is there are 50 cards in the set. Each card has its own unique booster fun treatment, and then there's the Halo foils and the 35 additional cards, but like here you see this absolutely amazing booster fun by Scott Fisher of Nissa's desparking.
I think something that's really interesting between the two sets that have done this before is with War of the Spark. We wanted to get the feeling that there were so many Planeswalkers on Ravnica that you would just see these sparks zipping across Ravnica towards the Elder Spell without really knowing who they belong to. But in March of the Machine and Aftermath, these are more known characters that are near and dear to a lot of people. So this has a lot of implications and sort of like there's going to be some feelings around this, and we wanted to show just how real the threat was from Phyrexia, that there couldn't not be consequences.
And there are, and we'll see that here on the next slide as well. Wow, what's going on here? It looks as though there's some sort of new symbol showing up on the faces of these characters and their likenesses. I guess let's talk through. Aftermath shows us 10 desparked Planeswalkers.
Yep.
So I guess if we go to the next slide here, we'll see one of those appearing in legendary form for the very first time. We have Calyx. Okay, you want to...
I mean, he's out of a job.
Yeah, so Calyx designed to hunt down Elspeth and return her to the Underworld. Well...
that address doesn't work anymore, buddy. she's got a new title.
404.
Yeah. Little slow.
Next up, we have Sam appearing on Amonkhet.
Yeah, I'm excited to see Samet here because she's won me a whole lot of Commander games, and I'm excited for her to win me some more.
In her new spiffy creature form?
Yeah.
Yep.
Is that vegetation on Amonkhet?
Yeah.
Weird.
Yeah.
Wonder what's going on there.
I don't know. Next up, we have Obnixilis. Maybe desparked, but he's still looking kind of in charge here.
Yeah, well, so Obnixilis, ever an opportunist, had essentially sat out most of the Phyrexian invasion, kind of waiting to see who would come out on top. And what he found in New Capenna after all the fighting was a pretty seriously destabilized city and a lot of power vacuum. And I think here you can see him getting real comfy in that power vacuum.
He went to fill that void.
Oh, yeah.
He is the job creator.
Yeah.
Got it. Next up, we have Kiora. Blue-green Planeswalkers are awesome. Blue-green Legends are awesome. Here, kind of gone fishing.
Yeah, she's hanging out in Zendikar. A lot of Planeswalkers, I think, understandably returned to their home planes during the invasion, either to defend what they felt was important to them, their loved ones, their favorite sandwich shop, or
very important.
Yeah, very important. Because they would have the home turf advantage, right? And which is certainly true for Kiora with the many behemoths of the ocean that she can call on in Zendikar.
Totally. Next up, we have a character that, so as we were going through all of our planning for this, we were like, who's going to talk about each of these characters? And there was maybe a little bit of a rivalry on who was going to talk about this, so there's no need to fight.
Typro would be really proud.
Typro's awesome. Writing him was so much fun. In all of the Kaldheim sections of March of the Machine, I actually went back and wrote it as if I was writing a saga. So I am so happy to see that Tyvar has made it out of this okay, and I'm so excited to see what he does.
Very possible he does not know that he's been desparked.
He barely knew he had a spark, so I don't think this is even phasing him, really.
Doesn't know, doesn't care, same difference, right? So Tyvar here, fresh off of punching a serpent, a Phyrexianized serpent down. And also, you touched Kaldheim a little bit.
I did, yeah. I wrote the Kaldheim main story. I think Tyvar has this funny effect on, as far as I can tell, every writer who's gotten to touch a Tyvar story. I know this happened to you. It's happened to Shannon also, where you go into it and you go, this arrogant guy, just no shirt, strutting around like he owns the place. And by the end of the story, you're like, he's my favorite perfect angel. And I love him to death.
So yes, that is Tyvar, and we didn't even have to fight. Next up, Roy, we see Sarkon here.
Oh, yeah. And this is, without a doubt, the happiest I have ever seen Sarkon. He's gazing lovingly up at the dragons on Tarkir. He's kind of living the dream.
Dragon Boy's back with his favorite creature type. Right. Yeah, we're there. Next up, we have Nahiri.
Yes. So Nahiri and Nissa both were evangels of Elish Norn, completed and serving her as her most dangerous lieutenants, right? They could planeswalk. They were massively powerful, both of them. And both of them were de-Phyrexianized between March of the Machine and Aftermath. Nissa, she woke up surrounded by friends, loved ones, allies, people she trusted and cared about, and who cared about her. Nahiri woke up buried in the rubble of the device that she had tried to use to destroy her home plane. So pretty different awakenings.
Yeah.
Yeah, and Nahiri is somebody who, let's not forget, is one of the few remaining Old Walkers from before the Mending as well. So this isn't her first rodeo when it comes to world-ending events in the slightest. It's also not her first rodeo dealing with these feelings of alienation. And now that she's kind of worked through a lot of her feelings about Innistrad, she's got a whole lot more feelings about Zendikar now. And I'm excited to see what happens there.
Totally. And we see some of the lingering effects of Phyresis here as well, right? And we'll see that on some of the other characters as well. Next up, we have Narset on Tarkir, looking awesome.
Yes. An interesting thing about Narset here is her card name is Enlightened Exile, which speaks to her current status on the plane, where she's discovered some very interesting facts about Tarkir's history, but it's led to her being sort of banished from the monastery of Ochutai and having to sort of make her own way on her home plane.
Roy, you very succinctly summarized a 3-block set focused on time travel. So well done. That's good.
Thanks.
Yeah, you're welcome. Next up, we have my favorite robot, Kay. It's Carr.
Yeah, K does not stand for Karn. I get that a lot. But no, Karn here is taking a rest. He really does deserve the rest. When we last saw him in March of the Machine, he made the incredibly difficult decision to transgress his oath of pacifism and to put an end to Elish Norn. That was not something that he did lightly in the slightest. It took a whole lot of doing. And even after that, he gave up his spark. He gave up Venser's spark in order to help Ajani and to help Nissa and to Dephyrexianize them. And his reward for all of that is that now he gets to hang out on Jalfir/Mirrodin, and it's so cool that he's got the sons of Mirrodin behind him over there. Yeah. And I'm just happy he gets to rest. The sad cyborg boy gets to rest.
Yeah, you can see with this art too, he's like incorporated other metals into his body, because by the end of as you well know, by the end of his time with the Phyrexians, his original body was extremely messed up.
Yeah, but look at those hex gold plates. He wears it well. And then last and certainly not least, we touched on her before. We'll talk about her again. Here we have Nissa.
So this means just so much, like I said before. It's almost hard to know where to start, but the truth is that this journey starts several years ago, and it's something that's been a long time coming. And in a lot of ways, Chandra and Nissa coming together and being able to be together in the aftermath of the invasion is kind of just the story of being together after Phyresis. And so much of the themes here tie back to this relationship. And if you haven't read the Aftermath story by Grace Fong, centering on Nissa and Chandra, I really recommend it, because it does just sum up so much of this. Of now they've had this experience where Nissa did try to kill Chandra, and not only that, she kind of read her for filth while she was doing it. And that's something that they have to overcome, and that's something that they have to forgive and try to build something new. And stuff isn't the same anymore. Nissa can't planeswalk, but Chandra's still there for her, and Nissa's still there for Chandra. And that in the end, that's what it's all about, is things are different now. We don't know the extent of how different they are, but as long as we have each other, we're going to be all right.
Yeah, that's something too. In this particular piece, you can see just visually some lingering effects of Phyresis on Nissa as just sort of a nod to that of like, so much happened and it was so severe that we didn't want to just wipe the slate clean and say everything's fine now, but we wanted sort of a constant reminder of that's something that is going to have to consistently be worked through.
Yeah, you see some of that copper plating and that verdigris, but truly like a pretty heartfelt ending to an arc long in the making.
Long in the making.
So the last of our D-Spark Planeswalkers here. Next up, we have some legends. The feels.
I am so sorry, Nashi.
So what's going on here? So we see Nashi. Whose scrolls are those?
Those are his adopted mom, Tamio's scrolls. She had a bit of a bad time during the invasion. A little bit of a bad time.
Yeah, completed.
I wouldn't know anything about that.
Killed.
How could you?
No, but on a serious note, it was important to have that Tamio story and to slow down and to have that moment, just because Tamio means so much to so many people. She's not like a lot of the other planeswalkers. She has a family. She has a home. When she planeswalks, she's kind of gathering stories, but she has somewhere to go to that means a lot to her. And so when we went back to Kamagawa, and when she went back to Kamagawa, it was very important to just slow down and to deal with the consequences of that and to be in her head for it. And as those of you who read the March of the Machine story know, Tamio bravely sacrificed herself before the invasion of Kamagawa could be fully complete. And Nashi was actually there when she did that. And we see him here carrying on her legacy a bit. And also, Tamio's last scroll, she had 3 scrolls that she prepared for just such an occasion. The last one contained a memory of her that is kind of, it's not quite alive, but it's like a spirit. And she's hanging around with Nashi now.
It's a recording.
Yeah, like a recording.
Yeah.
It's pretty awesome here.
Just a heartbreaking recording.
Yes. The recording cares about her son very much, too.
And next up, we see some Sigarda here with some Halo effect. Taylor, talk about the report of...
So in Stage 5 of the invasion, Halo gets let loose throughout the multiverse and puts sort of a pause on Phyresis and allows like a heroic boon for the heroes to be able to fight back. And this particular moment on Innistrad, I think it was really nice to be able to re-establish an angel that was there to protect the people with Avacyn no longer there. Having Sigarda be sort of set up to be the symbol of hope, essentially, for the people on the plane of Innistrad was really, really fun, and I think important for that plane to reestablish. Bring a little bit of light to the darkness.
When are you going to get the Sigarda tattoo? Okay.
I should, right? Like a nice, like the hair on staff. I think that'd make a pretty dope one.
Pretty cool.
We get along pretty well. We collaborate very well. Let's talk about somebody who butts heads.
Yeah.
Fully forgot actually where we were going with that.
What is this?
I love Arnie. Arnie Broken Brow originally. Now Arnie Metal Brow. He has clearly won yet another headbutting contest. This character is really near and dear to me because the side story for Kaldheim that he starred in was actually the first thing I wrote for Magic, and he's just such a fun character, a braggart with his greatest accomplishment jutting out of his forehead.
Accomplishments.
Yeah, 2 now.
You taught me how plural works. Next up, we have Pia Nalar here.
Pia is about to go to tea with Chandra, and she's earned that, I think, after everything that she went through. Pia was one of my touchstone characters when I was writing March of the Machine. We spent a bit of time with her in the earlier parts of the invasion, along with Saheeli, and we got to see the rollout of all of Kaladesh's countermeasures against Phyrexia, which unfortunately came slightly too late. But Pia made it out okay, and I'm so happy that she did.
I also love the addition of the color here to show the character growth. So Pia, historically a mono-red character, has gained white here and gone from kind of renegade of the consulate and moved into this. It's a time for rebuilding, right? The war is over. She recognizes that the plane needs her now, right? Next up, we have.
Oh yeah. Oh yeah,
no.
the big guy.
Who's this?
Niv Mizzet, obviously the living guild pact of Ravnica, a fantastic character, and I can't say too much about what he's gotten up to on Ravnica, as much as I would love to. But I'll say for now, Niv Mizzet is keenly interested in the various changes that have swept through the multiverse. And you'll be seeing more about that.
Maybe.
Someday.
Maybe. Is that something you'd like to see? Yeah. And then next up, we have Danitha Capuchin.
Oh, yeah. Danitha, who hasn't been fighting as long as Koth, maybe, but has really had a longer invasion than most people. She spent most of DMU battling Shieldred sleeper agents. She had to kill her own father, who had been converted into one of those. And here she's, I don't know if you'd call it a well-earned rest, because she's clearly taking up a position of great importance and responsibility as the head of House Capation.
Yeah, it was really nice detail too by Randy Vargas, and a prompt to put her father in the stained glass behind her, almost like he's resting his hand on her shoulder, like, you've got this.
It's a really nice touch, Taylor. That's good stuff. That's visual storytelling right there. So that feels good. This next one doesn't quite feel as good. So, Roy, you talked a little bit about the wilds of Eldraine. What's happening here?
Right. So if you were at the preview panel yesterday, I talked about this a little more extensively. So I don't want to rehash too much of what I've already gone over, but the greatest loss felt by Eldraine was, of course, the loss of King Kenrith and Queen Linden, the beloved monarchs of Eldraine. And for the next big set that we're doing, Wilds of Eldraine, we're gonna dive right into what happens when a setting loses their sort of not just their leaders, their authority, but also sort of their moral center, and what might follow that.
Yeah, that's stay tuned. And that's it. That's it. We have 3 minutes and 30 seconds left. With that time, I'm going to thank absolutely everybody that worked on Mom and Aftermath. I said it before, I'll say it again. It takes a village. There was so much love and attention to detail that was paid on this set. I don't even have a list of names because it wouldn't fit on any of these cue cards. But for real, this was a labor of love for so many people, and I hope y'all are enjoying it, and I hope you love it. And stay tuned. The one thing that Aftermath also does is it kind of bridges the gap, right? You talked about it yesterday. It's not only the coda, but it's laying the groundwork and the foundation for the things that are actually coming for the multiverse, and I can't wait for you all to see it. With that, with 2 minutes and 50 seconds left, do we want to open it up for some questions? Maybe a question?
Yeah.
Is there a mic right here? Is that mic hot? Let's find out.
Test.
Yeah, you're in.
Hey, thanks for the panel, guys.
Hey, yeah.
So I have a question about Taylor's favorite plane, Segovia. So we've had visually little exposure to it, and it takes it's usually focused in on what's being portrayed and taking advantage of that tilt effect. I thought that art of Invasion of Segovia is really interesting, particularly because of it's an underwater scene, right? We're watching this normal-sized Phyrexian boot stomping out what appears to be a city, though. Mm-hmm. So I wanted to ask, in addition to being the miniature plane, is Segovia also an underwater world plane? Or is there some other explanation for what's going on here?
I think so. That's a great question. First off, we're coming down to the wire of just like, what planes are we going to actually put in here? What planes do fans really resonate with and actually love? And Segovia happens to be one of those planes because we haven't shown it too much. So there's sort of that like, I want to know more about what's going on here. Exactly to your question. Mostly we've seen sort of outside, above water, an angel flying around Segovia. We wanted to sort of expand the breadth of what Segovia could be and how expansive of a plane it has the opportunity of being. So is it all underwater? Probably not, but are there underwater cities? Apparently, yes.
I think one of the gags back in the day too was like, so Leviathan, okay, it's an 11-11. Segovia and Leviathan is a 3-3, right? You're like, but it's a Leviathan, but it's the size of a hill giant. Like, what's going on here? And I think that was important for the conceptor that wrote this one to be like, no, we're going to frame it underwater so we can get the behemoths in the art and showcase that.
Yeah, it's great because it's a tiny plane, but it's a big plane. It's like a snow globe plane.
Tiny plane, big problems. Thank you.
Love it. Thank you.
All right, we've probably got time for maybe one more. I don't know. Right. They're going to kick us off. I don't know what happens. We'll find out.
We'll see.
All right. So, Martian Machine saw the return or the reappearance of Ulgrotha. And I know you can't answer the question. So I'm just going to say how cool it would be if we finally found out if the good Baron traveled back through that dwarven gate back to his home world. I'll leave it like that.
Noted, Reinhardt. Thank you.
All right, last one.
Just a quick question.
Yes.
For the story people. We saw also in Mom that when Ellis Nornis defeated the Phyrexian oil goes inert, and it's explained in Cataxis altered the change in Phyrexian oil, because before that it had a generational memory, so it would spread, it wouldn't connect to people. So I just want to ask, was that a story decision to kind of control just like the after effects? Because if these planes had original Phyrexian oil, it would be a continuing problem. So was that a change to kind of control the after effects?
Yeah, I mean, so I think the answer is yes and no. There are, obviously, we have to, like you said, like the whole, like, one drop of glistening oil dooms a plane. We couldn't have that happen. But at the same time, I think we found a way to make it so perfectly line up with Norn as a character of this megalomaniac that couldn't bear the thought of something going out of her control and outliving her after this, right?
Yeah.
It worked out well here, but the more terrifying aspect of that is if Phyrexia is evolving and the glistening oil itself has evolved or changed over time, like what are the potential ramifications that could have if it changes again? So, all right, they're going to kick us out of here.
Yep.
Anyway, again, thank you all
thanks for
so very
answering.
much. Great question. Enjoy the rest of MagicCon Minneapolis, and thank you.
Thank you, Minneapolis.
Oh, that's